Serious, socially fluent people of Reddit, what are some mistakes you see socially awkward people making?
I heard a quote once that helps me whenever I talk to strangers: confidence is when you walk into a room and assume everyone already likes you. Obviously, this isn't true for every case, but in my experience, if you start off every interaction by imagining that good feelings exist, good feelings will actually exist. Everyone just wants to be liked, so if you pretend they already like you, you'll like them, and then they'll be happy that you already like them. It's a warm, fuzzy cycle. A mistake I see that socially awkward people make is assuming that everyone doesn't like them. And then the cycle becomes awkward, rather than warm and inviting.
The worst part of this is when you realize that someone likes you, and for whatever reason you're just screwing up socially that day, and you can see the light leaving their eyes as they decide, conclusively, that they don't really want to talk to you anymore. I had a date not too long ago where I was just tired and boring, and I spent the whole thing just upset at what I was putting this poor girl through. Yeah, I know. I wish this could be over too.
A little late, but when it comes to dates, you could probably save it by telling your date that you're having a bad day and ask for a reschedule.
I like to think that everyone wants to like me. No one goes up to a stranger and thinks to themselves, oh man, look at this asshole, they're going to be a drag to talk to. Nope. They want to have a good time talking to you and getting to know you. They want exactly the same thing you want to happen. You and the stranger both have a common goal, and it's helpful to think of it that way, as opposed to thinking of them as an adversary.
I find myself thinking that about strangers all the time.
I think that a huge reason why I absolutely hate going out in public and talking to other people is because I'm a judgmental fuck, and I just automatically assume everyone else is a judgmental fuck.
I don't consider myself amazingly socially fluent, but I work with a lot of engineers who make me feel like I am in comparison. The biggest mistake that I see them making is talking about themselves or their work non-stop without acknowledging that there's another person in the conversation. It's like, dude, you're in a conversation. Pause sometimes. Gauge the other person's interest. Ask a question of them occasionally. Edit, I feel like I should have noted that I'm also an engineer, well, more of a scientist in terms of my job now, so I have nothing against engineers. It's just something that I've noticed frequently among my colleagues.
I'm an engineer and this happens all the time. People will constantly talk to me about technical things that I truly do not care about at all. That's great that they have a passion for setting up servers in their basement. I just don't care. At all. In an attempt to not be rude, I'll basically just agree with whatever they're saying. And they just keep going. One night I was working very late and someone was talking to me about some crap I didn't care about. I was looking at my monitor and fell asleep for a few minutes. Another coworker who was not part of the conversation said this guy continued to talk to me even while I was asleep.
I was a totally socially dysfunctional person in high school. When I was 13 or 14, I often went weeks without speaking to anyone outside of my family. I'm now reasonably well liked with a very big social circle post-college. I was my college class president and am now really involved in my community in a bunch of big ways. Things I learned. People want to like you. I used to think that when I met someone I had to do or say something likable to start off a friendship. The anxiety and pressure of trying to figure out how to get someone to like me would make me say nothing at all. It turns out that for the most part, someone who doesn't know you assumes that you're a chill person already. So making conversation became more about making the other person comfortable, rather than, oh God, don't say anything dumb or they're going to hate you. People love talking about themselves. And most people have some form of life experience that is genuinely interesting. You can lean on that, ask them questions and let them talk. It's flattering and it'll actually take strain off of you too. If you're socially awkward, you're probably more focused on yourself than the other person. I recently dated someone who I really liked, but was more awkward than me. I noticed that I spent the entire time asking them questions about themselves, and they'd never reciprocate, since they were anxious and just focused on answering. In a weird way, social awkwardness becomes unintentionally selfish. You're worried about the other person's opinion of you, so you spend the entire time thinking about yourself. In group settings, looking out for other people in conversation. If someone gets talked over, it's super appreciated when you step in with, wait, what were you saying earlier about? People notice it and really value it. Keeping an eye out on your own energy levels. I'm social now or whatever, but I'm like an iPhone 5 with a shitty battery. I can be friendly and happy and funny for a few hours and then I need to be alone before the jig is up and everyone realizes I'm an awkward mess. If I feel tired or uncomfortable after a while at a party, then I leave with a polite excuse. No sense in pushing it. At worst, you're seen as that person that is super busy all the time but still took the time to stop by and say hi. Minor things, good posture and dressing well go a long way.
My father told me when I was young that if I don't know what to say to someone, then ask them about themselves because people love talking about themselves. I've used this method for decades and I can easily make friends anywhere, waiting in line, in a coffee shop, wherever. I can very easily get people to open up, laugh, and enjoy my company. However, the downside to this has been that it's turned into a one-sided thing. Most, if not all of my family and friends, rarely ask me anything about myself. They appear to see me as the person they can easily talk to, but don't seem to realize it's just about themselves. I have in-laws who I can chat with, or be a sounding board to, for hours, but when I relate something they've said to myself, they'll respond with, "I didn't know you used to be a professional musician," etc. Because they've literally never asked me about my life, even after 12 years. And if I've worked in some information about myself to them, they don't remember it in the least. People rarely ask me anything about myself outside of, "How are you?" I mentioned it to my husband and he's noticed it too. So much so that he now tries to steer a conversation so that I can get a chance to share information about myself, rather than be the one asking all the questions. Either way, it still works in terms of appearing to be social, but after years, I don't really enjoy it all that much because it feels like no one cares to ask me anything about my life.
I recently dated someone who I really liked, but was significantly more socially awkward than me. I noticed that I spent the entire time asking them questions about themselves, and they'd never reciprocate. This is my biggest pet peeve in dating. I am a good listener and genuinely interested in people, so I ask questions and like to hear the answers. Less than 50% of people ask me any questions back. I don't say anything about it, but it's a good test for me on whether I want to spend more time with that person.
Taking their mistakes too seriously. Being an anxious person myself, I get that fucking up and saying "you too" to the waiter or the ticket person is embarrassing, but you're literally one face of thousands they have to deal with every day. What I usually do after fucking up like that to avoid that dark, memory-filled shame hole in my brain is to just explain my fuck up in an amused tone, laugh at myself, and move on. I bet you any money they'll remember you more for your flustered behavior afterwards rather than the initial fuck up.
This is true, and I just found out for myself that no one will give a fuck about something small except you. My friend has a small rock waterfall, man-made, outside his house. A couple years ago I was walking down the waterfall and fell down. Not into the water, but down the side. Pretty embarrassing, but also pretty funny. Then at least 10 minutes later I fell down again. And both these times it wasn't like I fell on my ass. I tumbled head first 'cause I missed my step, and it's honestly amazing I didn't fall into the water both times. After the second time I felt stupid. I thought no one would forget it. I have a hard time walking downstairs without looking at the ground now. This was over 5 years ago. Anyway, fast forward till this past weekend, when I was at my friend's place again, I brought it up. And both of my friends who were there that day have no recollection I fell down the waterfall twice in 15 minutes. We were all also very sober at the time too. So basically, don't trip over the small stuff, no one gives a fuck except you. I suspect it's because they're too busy thinking over their own slip-ups.
Here's an exercise. Think of the last time you said or did something really stupid or embarrassing. You can probably think of something in about 5 seconds, right? Now think of the last time someone else did something truly stupid or embarrassing. Probably takes a bit longer to come up with something, right? Maybe you can't think of anything at all. That's what's going on in almost everyone's head.
I've met a lot of people who speak in very self-deprecating ways to an uncomfortable extent. I understand not wanting to appear vain and opting to humble oneself, demonstrating self-awareness. However, some people will take this a bit too far. When speaking about yourself, do so with confident modesty, don't reduce yourself to only your flaws.
If I notice someone constantly negging themselves, being self-deprecating, I will bring it to their attention. Damn dude, you're being pretty hard on yourself. Sometimes people don't realize that they're doing it, but I've casually observed most are consciously fishing for sympathy or attention.
Not noticing when they are telling an irrelevant story to a service worker or stranger. The number of waiters, waitresses that I see dancing on the spot while waiting for a customer to stop talking is astounding.
Or anyone. The never-ending boring story is painful at parties too.
I have this problem from the other side. I'm hyper-aware of that situation and overcorrect by either not telling stories or racing through them really quickly because I don't want to take up the other person's time or for them to get bored. I'm a bad storyteller.
I do this one a lot. I'll realize it like halfway through and go, shit, I'm wasting this person's time, and then end it as quick as I can, but then I'm beating myself up over it for the rest of the night.
Don't tell the other person that you think you're socially awkward.
My buddy's girlfriend said this to me once after talking to her for about a minute or two when I met her. It completely shut down the conversation and I wanted to be like, you were doing okay?
Sometimes you need to be a cheerleader in a conversation. I did this, you did that. Hey, great. Did you hear he did that? If it's sincere, it goes a long way.
Thinking that being an introvert is the same thing as being socially awkward. The introvert-extrovert scale runs on the x-axis and social skills run on the y-axis. It is entirely possible to be a socially skilled introvert just like you can have a socially awkward extrovert. One of the biggest mistakes I see socially awkward introverts make is conflating those two issues and thinking, well, my personality is introverted, therefore I am socially awkward. Social skills are skills and they can be improved. Thinking, I'm an introvert, gives people an excuse to not work on or practice those skills. Edit, really cool that this is getting a lot of positive responses. Great to see all these socially skilled introverts represent. The responses have made one thing really clear, no matter how introverted you are, or believe yourself to be, you absolutely can improve your social skills. And the mistake to address the original question in this thread is to let "I'm introverted" stop you from practicing, improving your social skills.
100% on the money with this. Introversion doesn't mean you're a shy person. Rather, shyness is a manifestation of social discomfort from an introvert. Introverts tend to withdraw inward for comfort, and being in a socially uncomfortable situation is no different. Extroverts, however, have the opposite effect. They turn outward for comfort. The social discomfort doesn't manifest as shyness, but manifests instead as the guy that just keeps digging himself deeper. If an introvert said an unintentionally unacceptable thing, they would apologize and shut up, but an extrovert would try to fill the awkward silence with more words to try to move past the awkwardness, and often get themselves into a worse situation. Edit, so I wrote this at work under some time constraints and wasn't really expecting it to take off as much as it has. There's a lot of things I glossed over for the sake of time, but I do want to say this. It's important to remember that everyone is both introverted and extroverted to some extent. The introvert-extrovert titles are only used to describe which one we prefer. Some people have a minor preference for one over the other, while some people swing far to the extremes. It's also important to note that there are 7 billion people in the world and we're trying to divide them into two categories. As such, anything said is best appended with "generally speaking," and nothing will be 100% accurate for 100% of people.
Being purposefully weird and random is off-putting to those who don't know you.
Or off-putting to those that know you too. I work in retail and a lot of the shelf stalkers are just unbearable to be around. I loathe going into the break room with any of them and overhearing whatever crazy nonsense they say they do that's completely normal for them. A recent example of one of the shelf stalker dudes being unbearable. I was like super enthusiastic today during the Black Friday sale. I was practically scaring people and the managers with how excited I was. Haha, I'm just like that. The worst part of this example was there were two girls who he sat with and was continuing on with his nonsense toward them. Hey, why are you two so tired? You need to be more hyper and enthusiastic like me. I'll start giving you lessons. I'll come to your house every day and wake you up and make sure you're as chipper as me. I've never felt more like telling a dude to just shut the fuck up and let me enjoy my shitty break room coffee in peace than at that moment.
Not making eye contact. It shows engagement and confidence when you do.
This, coupled with just laughing it off or casually correcting yourself if you say something wrong, is about 90% of not seeming awkward. Everyone says stupid shit. No one remembers it but you. The best way to make sure no one remembers it is to laugh at yourself, correct what you meant to say and move on. If you don't make a big deal of it, neither will anyone else.
That's one I'll never be able to overcome. I apparently learned at a very young age to not look people in the eye because it's their best way to intimidate you. I was later taught to not look people in the eye because it's a form of bullying. No matter what I do, no matter how hard I try, looking someone in the eye always turns into either submission or dominance.
The trick I learned that made it easy is to not look at their eyes. Look at the bridge of their nose. It's close enough that they think you're looking them in the eyes, but you're not, so you don't get psyched out by it.
Letting themselves be spoken over or ignored. Stand up for yourself. If anyone takes offense, they were probably the asshole talking over you.
Related, if you are ADD-ish and catch yourself interrupting people, say, sorry, I interrupted you, go on. I've found people tolerate these tendencies a lot more if you do this.
Keeping conversations going when no one else is into it. Conversations naturally die off, usually within a minute or two. It's okay to say, see ya later, and walk away. One conversation lever I like is, alright, well, I don't want to keep you, because it acknowledges that the convo is over and lets them make an easy escape without being too blunt.
This is big. My brother is really socially awkward in some subtle ways, and this is his biggest issue. He doesn't pick up on body language when someone isn't interested in what he is saying. So, as a result, he'll just keep talking about whatever random thing that no one understands. I've learned to just tell him to shut up because I'm not interested. But, I'm his brother, and it took me 20 years to realize this is what needed to happen. This is consistent too. Too many people will start conversations that other people can't keep up with, so it kills the mood, and socially awkward people seem to notice that, but they don't understand why. Keep the conversation to stuff you have in common, or something that others can converse about. Stop bringing up the obscure anime that you found last week.